How many miles a week does a runner need to average to run a sub 3-hour marathon? According to the Ultimate Runner's Guide, Let'sRun.com, user HRE says they ran a sub 3 off of 100 miles a week, topping off at 140. Low mileage runner says they did it off of 33 miles a week with one 18-mile long run. But most responses tend to mirror that of Precious Roy, who ran on average about 50 miles a week, peaking at 70. So the question is, why the variance? To prove my point on variance, if you have run a sub 3, put in the comments below how many miles a week you ran and what your peak mileage was. How can one person run a sub 3 marathon on low mileage and another runner on high mileage? It's because total weekly mileage sort of doesn't really actually matter, but in reality kind of matters a little bit. Okay, now let's talk about why mileage matters and it also doesn't matter, starting with why it doesn't matter. If you cannot run a 7-minute mile, then you can't run 6:52 a mile, which means you can't run 6:52 for 26.2 miles. So even if you ran a 100-mile week, it wouldn't matter. This is legend coach Jeff Cunningham, who coached Nick Bare to a sub 3 and later a sub 250 marathon.
There are two things about Jeff Cunningham. One, he sounds a lot like Matthew McConaughey. Number two, here's what he has to say about what it takes to run a sub 3.
You got to be able to handle some volume. You know, being able to run a marathon in under 3 hours, if you're only running 20, 25, 30 miles a week, is probably unrealistic. Now, I think we all recognize that not everybody can dunk a basketball. There are limits, but within reason, if you have achieved certain sort of checkpoints in your running, it's possible to get to sub 3 if you have the ability to do so. If you can run a mile in 5:40, I think you've got a chance. Can you run a 10K at about 6:20 pace? You just have the raw materials, the talent to be able to do it.
So, do I have the raw materials? Well, they say in order to run a sub 3-hour marathon, you first must be able to complete a half marathon in 1 hour and 25 minutes. Last year, during the Austin 3M half marathon, I ran it in 1 hour, 23 minutes, and 58 seconds. Now, this was a downhill course, but even when I factor out the cheating with the grade adjusted pace, my time still would have been under 1 hour and 25 minutes. So I think I definitely do have the raw materials.
On weekly mileage, Coach Jeff Cunningham is saying, what is the goal? The goal is not to hit some sort of weekly mileage, it's to kick ass on race day. And if we're chasing a high weekly mileage, we may risk injury.
So, chasing a weekly number can risk injury and doesn't define the quality of running. The quality of running. Here I introduce to you Andrew Snow with the channel Run Elite. He just posted a video on weekly mileage.
Now, increasing your mileage does help, but the curve flattens off pretty quickly. This is called the law of diminishing return. And what it means is that basically if you go from not running at all to running 10 miles per week, you're going to have a pretty good increase in your ability to run any distance. And if you go from running 10 miles per week to maybe 20 or 30, you're gonna have yet another nice big bump in your ability to perform well. But then going from 30 to 50, you'll have a little bit of a bump, and 50 to 70, even less, and it starts to flatten out. Going from 110 miles per week to 120 might not yield any performance benefit. And in fact, it might actually hurt your performance because you start to perhaps overtrain or get hurt.
And this is the argument for why mileage matters. It is not the mileage, it is the quality of the workouts. And the bigger the mileage allows a runner to have more volume of speed work.
This was echoed from another running coach on YouTube whose channel I can no longer find. Dear algorithm, please bring that guy back. Anyway, that coach, he compared running to cake. Your actual cake is your aerobic and base fitness. It's what you're working with. And the speed work is the icing, and there's only so much icing you can put on a small cake. So let's say aerobically and physically, I can handle 40 miles a week. And on Tuesday, I do a 12x400 workout for 3 miles, and then a 5-mile tempo on Thursday. That might be a reasonable amount of speed work for the size of my cake. Now, if I go out and add a 16-mile long run with 12 miles at marathon pace in that same week, I am more likely to get injured because my legs are not used to taking those impact forces, especially if I'm running that kind of mileage and that kind of speed work week to week, over and over. Now this is great for weekly mileage theory, but what kind of mileage am I actually running? Okay, T-minus 14 weeks to the Houston Chevrolet Marathon. Today we have a long run. It is 14 miles. We'll bring our weekly mileage up to 43 miles for the week. Okay, 13 weeks out, long run. 14 miles again for a total of 45 and a half for the week. When I was 12 weeks out, I ran 47 miles with the 16-mile long run. When I was 11 weeks out, I ran 50 miles with the 16-mile long run. And I am currently 10 weeks out, scheduled 53 miles with an 18-mile long run. All right, there are two things to note. Number one, the gradual increase of volume week to week is about 5% instead of following the 10% rule, because number two, the quantity of the speed work is also increasing. For example, the last 2 weeks, my speed day workout, the quantity of volume has been 4 miles, 16 by 400. And the week prior was a ladder, 400, 1600, back down to 400 intervals. This week, it was 5 miles, 1600 by 5. This brings me back to my overall point. It is not the weekly mileage that matters. It's doing enough weekly mileage to be able to knock out these workouts. And that's just one thing that I'm doing differently in this training block. Actually, the title of my next Sub 3 episode is what I am doing differently.